Hey, Jeremiah, it's Joey.
How you doing, Joey?
I'm doing well. How are you?
You're engaged.
I am engaged. You're right about that. Thank you very much.
Right. Yeah.
For some people, it's good. For some people, it's bad. I've heard both. But
well, I'm not going to say not congrats. I mean, that'd be a bad thing to say.
No, I'm enjoying it so far. But joining us now on Espresso Radio, the Pacers sideline reporter for Fox Sports Indiana. You see him everywhere all the time. Jeremiah Johnson. Jeremiah, how are you? How's California?
Pretty good. It's an unusual 4-game, 10-day late-season road trip, but the weather's nice. We're avoiding some of the rain and awful weather in Indianapolis, and so good to start this road trip in Golden State.
Jeremiah, what's going on? It's Ben Polizzi.
Ben, how are you?
I'm good. Look forward to see you on TV all the time. Love
Big
it.
Fan
Love
of
it.
your work on a variety of channels.
I love the suits, man. How many do you have? Where do you get them? Can we just talk about that the whole time?
Sure, if you want, and I could direct some of your listeners to my wife because she's a personal stylist at Nordstrom, and she's always looking to increase her client base. And
seriously?
So, that's primarily where I get my suits, although every once in a while I'll pick some up at a non-Nordstrom location. And the goal is to try to upgrade and get 2 or 3 new ones maybe every season. And now, I had some time at Fox 59 before this job, and so I've got a closet full, but I've got to recycle some out because some of the styles don't always match up with the current styles, but I try to mix it up and keep it fresh and add a little spice to the broadcast.
Jeremiah, this is something that we've been kind of talking about back and forth. Me and Ben and people at 1070 have just been talking about where does this Pacers team rank among your favorites. 99, 2000 was big. We had 2012, 2013 was big. But for you, you've been covering them for a while. Where does this team stack up for you?
Well, it's certainly in the moment. It feels like it's been one of the most enjoyable seasons, and I think I was asked this by JMV earlier in the week about what I thought about this particular question. And I do think you have to try to give credit to those teams that went to the Eastern Conference Finals 4 or 5 seasons ago. And while it didn't end well and there was some interlocker issues, I think, at times, and you'd like to have seen the team that was the number 1 seed be able to get to the finals, I think you do have to think and realize that as that run was starting, there were some pretty good moments, and the Fieldhouse was a pretty vibrant place, and it was such a home court advantage, and I think fans were really into that team. But I think the best part about this team is the success that they've had, the unexpected success. And, every team will change, and 2 years from now, you don't know how the makeup of the roster will be and how they'll react. But when you can have this much success when really nobody predicted it, it just lends itself to being a more enjoyable team and a team that's fun to watch. And, I think that as recently as August, I think people went into this season thinking, oh, just get through this season, get a good draft pick, and then hope that eventually you'll get your superstar. And I don't think anybody expected Victor Oladipo to be quite the star that he is. And he's probably been the biggest reason it's been such a fun season is because when your best player is as positive and as basically as much of a good person to be around as he is, it just spreads to everyone else. And it's not a knock on anyone else, but there's a perfect chemistry on this team. You've got different personalities. If Lance was on the team and you didn't have the right makeup, it might not work. But, Lance is positive, but he also can kind of get off track a little bit. But you've got to have somebody like that. And I think that it's just such a unique group that you've got different personalities that work well together, and they play the game the right way. They're fun to watch. They're fun to be around, and it translates onto the court if you're at Bankers Life Fieldhouse, through the television set, even during the radio broadcast. So, it's definitely one of the most. It's tough to rank them, but in my time, I certainly will live in the moment and say I'm having as much fun as I've ever had.
What the hell happened to that 2013-2014 team? Do you have any you're around them. You got to have some insight about that locker room. Because I'm still wondering about what happened to those guys.
Expectations can be tough, and I think that when you get the attention, it's tough to deal with that. And I'm not someone who tends to say there was one particular instance and this is what the downfall was. I think that you had guys coming into that stardom phase, and I remember Lance Stevenson was trying to be an all-star, and I think there were games he was trying to chase stats, and he probably had not quite matured to the point, and there were guys like David West that really didn't like that too much, and then you had Paul, who was the go-to guy, but he was also coming in to trying to be a star and become a brand. And so I don't have any specific answer to this is the reason it went downhill. They still finished that season as the number 1 seed, so I think people forget about that, and they went to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they went to Game 6. So it was a little rocky along the way, and obviously it didn't end end where anyone wanted. But I tend to think there's not just one thing. It was a lot of things coming together, and they probably just didn't handle the success and the stardom as well as you would have liked. And then it just ended, and then Paul got hurt, and then obviously we know what happened. So
all downhill from there. Yep.
JJ, who do you prefer the Pacers play in the first round? Are there any matchups that you prefer over others?
Well, I know that everyone else in the Eastern Conference seems to think they prefer to play the Pacers, right? I mean, every podcast I listen to, everybody on Twitter, whether it's a Philadelphia reporter or a Washington reporter or a Cleveland fan, they all say they want to play the Pacers. So my perspective is I'd probably just as soon play Washington, because if I look at that 3-game series, Washington has 2 wins against the Pacers, but in those 2 losses, one of the games, Victor Oladipo and Darren Collison, neither one played. And then the other one, Domantas Sabonis and Miles Turner, neither one played. And so if you have 2 of your guards, your starting guards out, you can kind of toss that one out. And then the other one, you have your 2 centers out, you can toss that one out. And the Pacers were somewhat healthy, they won at Washington. And I just don't feel like the Wizards are trending up right now, even if John Wall comes back. And then the other thing I would say is, of the group, I mean, it does really feel like it's either Cleveland, Washington, or Philadelphia. Of that group, they probably have the worst home court advantage, home court atmosphere of the 3. There's just not that much of a buzz inside their building. Philadelphia fans are going to be going crazy, and the Pacers are the only team to have beaten the Sixers on that court in 2018. So I don't fear the Sixers, but I definitely think I would just prefer Wizards or Sixers as opposed to Cavs. I think that's kind of a common answer because you don't really want to play LeBron in the first round. But either way, I think the Pacers will have a little bit of confidence no matter who they play.
All right, JJ, you guys are on like a 10-day road trip, like you said. What's the spot? What's the pregame meal or the postgame meal for you and Chris and Quinn? You guys hitting the bars? What are you doing?
It just depends on the day, but this is kind of a business trip portion of San Francisco and Sacramento. Sacramento is probably not my favorite spot. We'll have a day off there tomorrow and play them on Thursday. A little bit of extra time in Los Angeles, which could lend itself to seeing some sights. I was particularly looking at that Dodgers-Giants game on Friday night as a possibility, but tickets are pretty expensive. So if any of your listeners have any access to tickets to Dodger Stadium on Friday night, hook me up, and Chris Denari and I might be interested in doing that. I don't have a specific late-night spot mapped out. I will say an unusual part of this trip is we are busing from San Francisco or Oakland to Sacramento after the game. So we'll have about an hour and a half bus ride. So maybe something might get we might sneak something on the bus for that 90-minute trip to Sacramento tonight.
Yeah, we'll set up a GoFundMe for you guys or something. For you and Chris, help fund their trip to the Dodgers game. But
yeah.
Got one more, JJ. I've always wondered, is Jeremiah Johnson your real name? It's too good, man.
Absolutely.
It's too good, dude.
For Robert Redford, the Jeremiah Johnson, the movie?
No, I know about that.
Okay, well, I think that movie was 1976, and I was born in 78, and I don't think my parents were necessarily like it was their favorite movie, so they named me that, but I think they liked the sound of it. And here's a little known fact: if I was born in January, and if I was a girl, my name was going to be January Johnson. So I think I'm glad that it all turned out the way it did, because that would have been a little unusual. But yep, Jeremiah Johnson, real name.
This is JJ all the way, no matter what.
Yeah.
Your little boy. All right, JJ.
And memorable either way as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, but appreciate the time, Jeremiah. Best of luck out there in Cali. We'll be watching for sure, and talk to you soon.
All right, Ben and Joey, keep up the good work.
See you, JJ. I thought I told you I'm a